and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. I thank you very much for all of you for loving our shows and also spreading it around. And once it comes out on YouTube, do share it with your friends and families and send it out. And do comment because your comments help us improve the show. And I'm going to answer today some of the questions in the show as well. Now, Sat means truth, Logos means study or science, Sattology means a study of truth or science of truth. It's a true antonym of mythology, which means science of fake, lie, or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Mythology word was used especially against the Hindu Vedic scriptures to demean them, undermine them by the faith-based colonialists. So let us avoid that word altogether all the time and do not search about Hinduism or Veda history in Wikipedia or Quora. So today we're going to continue our Purva Paksha. Purva Paksha means analyzing all aspects of due diligence before we arrive at a conclusion. And today we are going to focus again on certain observations by Professor R.N. Iyengar. And I have a very, very good friend of mine, a friend, Muni, Rishi, whatever you call it, very elevated spiritual soul. And he is the person who has done so much research on it. So many books are being published. You can check out his books with Subbu Publications or on Amazon. So let us welcome him again with Shri Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
Namaskar, namaskar. So people have so many. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Naresh Subramanian, who commented on our YouTube, and he said that he's now inspired to look into astronomy, and I think that was our whole purpose, Nilesh Oak ji, right?
That is correct. And so thank you to Naresh Subramaniam ji. The idea behind these discussions, there will never be enough time that somebody else can do the research or draw the conclusions and then convey. I mean, but the true idea is that hopefully these discussions inspire people to do their own journey, with whatever something they want to focus on, because whatever we discuss may not be everybody's focus.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine. So therefore, what he just said is great. Let me add something else. This is a frequently asked question, I would call it. Time and time again, I cannot tell you how many I receive. For example, people through all different social media, YouTube and email and whatnot, people will ask a very typical question. That question goes something like this. Mr. X, Y, or Z is saying something about subject A, and they're saying either something B or C or D. So some person is saying about some subject and saying something. And that some subject, most cases at least, when they ask me the question, is related to something that what I have worked. So it could be Ramayana, Mahabharat, Ayurveda, Sushruta, Rigveda, you just name it, astronomy and so on. And then they want to know what is my opinion. So they claim that somebody is saying something about a specific subject and they want to know my opinion. And I want to use, Aditya ji, your platform to make this generic comment. And if I can find out a way and then you can send me a clip of this 1 minute, I will just reuse that somewhere, just the clip or this particular show and the link and saying, watch these first 2 minutes. That I understand, this is a very nice curiosity that they want to know. The challenge is so that is that person's either research work or opinion. Now this individual is asking me for my opinion. What is going to happen? So there is that person's opinion sitting there that this person may or may not have read. And many times I find they have not read. But even when they have read, now they're asking for my opinion. If these two things were matching, then basically we wouldn't have a conflict. And that's a good thing. But even when we have a conflict, that is not a bad thing, because it really makes people curious, that jidnyasa. And jidnyasu is one type of bhakta. One of the great bhakta is a jidnyasu. He says why there is a difference between the two. That is the whole idea behind this Purva Paksha. And so the idea is that they go and actually do the research. So my suggestion to those people who continue to ask these questions, and it's not the same person. The new people come on board and they ask the same question. So and so says something. What is your opinion? Well, I don't want to give opinion. In fact, I don't have an opinion, and my opinion does not matter. My opinion does not count. However, what does matter is what I have researched, what I have objectively tested in a scientific fashion, and the inferences that I have drawn. And I always expose them to very brutal analytical analysis. I do it myself. I encourage others to do it. So my suggestion to these people, these individuals, that I'm so happy that they have this curiosity. They should not be asking this question. Rather, what they should be doing, they should study my works through our shows like this, through blogs, through books. They should also study works of these other individuals that they ask me the question, like Mr. X is saying Y about Z, what is your opinion? And they should study their works and they should try to analyze it. Once they do this tapasya, if they have some question that they are not making, they cannot resolve this, they cannot logically think, or they have some confusion, then they should ask a question either to me or to you through YouTube and whatnot. And actually what we will do, this is another idea, Aditya, is that just like we are doing this on a new subjects and Purva Paksha, we might actually do a question and answer session. That's which right. Is to say the many questions that come to you through this, and we can compile those questions, and every show we can take 5 questions and just answer those, more in the sense of frequently asked question. So this is my very sincere, very ardent and humble request, suggestion to everyone. Please do not just ask me a question saying, Mr. X is saying Y about Z, what is your opinion? It is not of any use in moving the envelope and pushing the growth of knowledge. So a bit of a digression, but I wanted to say it because it's a frequently asked question.
No, you made a good point. See, swadhyay, swa-adhyay is very much needed, because if you do not need swadhyay, you don't do that. Swadhyay means your own study. Then the whole point is broken. See, after you get a driver's license, you have to drive your own car.
Correct.
And you cannot expect that you get a driver's license and you loan it to somebody else and they should drive the car for you, because they also have to get their own license.
Correct. And initially you may drive cautiously, and those one who are expert drivers, you may ask them, how am I driving? Did I drive the right way? Did I take that left turn the right way? And they may advise. So right. It is okay if you have done your work and then you are asking, right. As opposed to in an extremely tamasic fashion, I call it, very lazy fashion. Hey, what is your opinion? What is your opinion? Many times what that does is unnecessarily, if people are not mature enough, that some researchers thinks like we are quarreling, or the researcher thinks this guy is talking against me. We are not talking against anyone. We are just going for the truth. And that means every single claim should be exposed to brutal critique, my claims and claims of other people. And that's how we make progress. And that is our whole parampara, whole tradition of a dialogue,
So, Shrestha, yada achariti Shrestha. That shloka comes to my mind, because if you look at Naimisharanya, if you look at even Mahabharat, where Shampayan being speaking in Takshila, and now both of these places you will see the gurus also sitting in the audience and listening.
Yeah.
And they're checking. The gurus, they're checking. Vyasadeva is in both the audiences, sitting and checking.
Correct.
And also the other senior acharya. So Suta is talking, and then Shaunak Rishi is listening, then Shaunak is talking, then Suta is listening. So this is the Vedic culture of questioning, counter questioning. But the point is that ultimately everyone has to reach the truth, which is ultimately Brahman, Para Brahman, yeah, Brahman.
Correct.
Now, but for the humans, this discussion is extremely important, because Munya Sadhu Prishtham Bhavadbir Lokamangalam. The third person who is listening to you, he is learning the most. Mm-hmm. Because you both are talking, you both are scholars, 2 people are scholars, they're talking, but the third person is listening to both of them and having even better information.
Yeah.
So when you hear this Vad Vivad, but just by doing Vad Vivad for the sake of Vad Vivad is a useless exercise, is a time waste.
Correct.
But Vad Vivad for Swadhyay is what is required. And that's what Nilesh ji is also explaining much better than me, but he has done. So let us just begin then today's topic, and in
Okay.
between I'll cover those points when it comes to that.
Very good. So, so we are going to look at two pieces of evidence that Professor Arinayangar mentions, both in the context of Mahabharat war timing, his claim, and they both come from the Mahabharat. One comes from the Bhishma Parva that we have briefly discussed, and other times we have discussed this, and this will never go away. It is that important. The second one is from a Ashwamedha Parva. And so after just going through Ashwamedha Parva, Aditya ji, I have a question for you, because that is a frequently asked question, and I would rather ask you and you respond in general, in briefly, but you can respond, because many people are very curious what exactly is Ashwamedha Yajna. And granted, people can have a different perception of what it is, because sometimes the information is not very detailed in any specific grantha. But if you go around and look at all the grantha, there can be more. So I'll ask you that question as soon as we are done with the reference from the Ashwamedhic
Yes,
Parva of Mahabharata.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So let me start sharing some of the areas. I'm going to go very fast through it, because we are doing this for a while now. So reviving the tradition of Purva Paksha. Specifically, we are going to discuss, as we are continuing to discuss, the unscientific and illogical claim of 1478 BCE. The claim that it is unscientific and it is illogical is my claim. It's my criticism, my critique about the claim of Professor Arena Iyengar as for the year of Mahabharat War, 1478 BC. He does not think that there is anything wrong. And that's very natural many times, although unfortunate in some cases, that the person who does the work, he or she usually thinks that they have done a fine job. Like, I have done dating of Mahabharata and dating of Ramayana and dating of Rigveda, and I think I have done a fine job. I have done the work on astronomy and Surya Siddhantata and Sushruta Samvita, or Sushruta's dating, and I think I have done a fine job. So if you ask me, like, hey, what are the faults that you see in your research, and to be something that many will love to hear, I am always questioning my own claims. But it's really good if we can find a very sharp person, a very unbiased person, not a non-emotional person, who can look at my work, because I will be biased towards it by virtue of it, and can critique it. That's good. This is something I'm doing now to work of Professor Arina Iyengar as a part of Purva Paksha. We are in part 4. So this is Professor Arina Iyengar. We discussed this particular paper in last 3 parts. Actually, there is more to it in this paper, but I don't want to be just there forever. So I kind of discussed the important portions and moved on. It's a huge paper, 35 plus pages or 30 plus pages. Internal consistency of eclipses and planetary positions. In those 3 parts, I showed that he discusses 7 sets of planetary positions. He does not discuss all the planetary positions, but he does at least summarize significant number of planetary positions, planetary descriptions from Mahabharata text. Then he thought, in his mind anyway, he still thinks possibly that out of 7 sets, the first 3 sets match for 1478. And then even by his own admission, set number 4, 5, 6, 7 do not match. I showed that not only set number 4, 5, 6, 7 do not match, as he says, which we both agree now, but even his claim that the set number 1 and 2 and 3, where Saturn is afflicting Rohini, it does not match for 1478. Then we looked at the eclipse evidence. So we went through some of the eclipse evidence. There are some problems. Please go and watch part number 3. But then after discussing that, then he also comes and says, you know what, these do not match for 1478. And if you want to match them, we have to actually go 14 years in the past with respect to the timing of Mahabharata war. That is his conjecture. There is no evidence, no reference anywhere in the Mahabharata text that will tell us why somebody should do that kind of change, that kind of assumption, that you consider the descriptions of the eclipses described at the Mahabharata war and consider them to be actually occurring 14 years before. So we discussed that. Now, so his date falls into that 2nd millennium BC, the one same that Dr. Konrad Elst confidently feels that as if it is there, I have shown that there is absolutely no evidence in the Mahabharata text except two pieces of evidence that we discussed when we discussed claim of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar for 1793 BC. There is nothing that will take you to second millennium BCE. And for those two pieces of evidence that Dr. Ashok Bhatnagarji uses, everything else, and when I say everything else, I'm talking of 300 plus or 400 plus or 500 plus or 600 plus, depending on how you count. Those many pieces of evidence from Mahabharata go against anything in second millennium BC. Quickly, this is how a very high level summary of all the Mahabharata evidence. Professor Iyengar doesn't discuss this, which I am removing, doesn't discuss any long-term evidence that is driven by the precession. Therefore, he is not even looking for it in the right place. Okay, and where is he looking for? From 500 BC to 3000 BC. Well, guess what? All the references that I just showed you here in the blue, each one of them will take you from somewhere from 4500 BCE to 8000 BCE. Okay, none of them will take you to any time after 4500 BC. But then number of these other references also he does not consider. Planetary motion, we showed that none of them matches for 1478, and lunar and solar eclipses by his own admission, he admits that they do not match for 1478, and therefore he says maybe they match somewhere else, and maybe somebody made a mistake, as if Aditya ji, just as a visualization. Now, he didn't say it, I am saying it, what he's trying to say. It's like somebody has got all these documented loose pages, the printed pages, and somebody sneezed, as if, this is my visualization of it, and the pages fell down on the ground, and somebody collected it, but unfortunately not in the right sequence. So some of the eclipse description from the maybe the 14 years before the war happened to fall where the Mahabharata evidence is. That is as if what he is claiming. There is no basis for that in the Mahabharata text at all. It doesn't make sense. And you can show the eclipses for the timing of the Mahabharata war in 5561 BC. In fact, eclipses are a dime a dozen when you go back thousands of years. And what that means is typically there are two eclipses every year. Whether you can see them at a particular location on the earth and the nature of those eclipses, that changes. But those of you who know the Lagada cycle or Metonic cycle, you know that the similar type of eclipse occurs and reoccurs every 18 years, even at the same location. And as far as the earth is concerned, there are at least two eclipses every year somewhere. So it's not like a very rare phenomenon when we are talking of thousands and thousands of years. In any case, he cannot show those to be the case for 1478. Now, last time we went into his second paper. Okay, and I said there is a more trouble ahead. The second paper that we are discussing, this is again very much related to Mahabharata. He says some celestial observations associated with Krishna lore. Krishna is a character in Mahabharata, and he's looking at the references related to Mahabharata. In the paper, he is also discussing something from Harivamsha and additional Purana. We will go, this is a very fascinating reference that he has pulled from Harivamsha and Purana that we will do in the next session. But today I want to discuss two specific references from the Mahabharata. One of them for the very first time, at least on Adityaji's show, and the other one, Arundhati Vasishtha. I mean, I'm discussing this for last 11 years, so I'll give a quick summary of that again. So this is what I showed you last time. What Professor Iyengarji did is, now you tell me if this passes the test of scientific acumen and logical reasoning or even a Vyaptijnan. To explain that Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishtha Prashtata Kruta from the second adhyay of Bhishma Parva, from the second chapter, he took that only one line out of the two-line shloka. And then he combines that with another half line, another half shloka from another chapter, the third chapter, and he gives those. So although this is not scientific, this is not logical, the credit should be given that he is not hiding anything. He is very clearly stating that, hey, you know what, I couldn't make sense of the shloka by itself, the Arundhati observation. I cannot make a sense of the other half shloka from the third chapter, and I'm trying to combine to see if I can make sense of it. I would again encourage you to go back and read this paper. You will find after even combining this, he cannot make any sense of it. That is my analysis of it. He doesn't think. He thinks whatever his observation is, he thinks that's perfectly matches now. Oh, so beautiful. Like, so he says drifting away from his previous expected position around 1500 BCE, referring to the position of a Dhruva, is what is been described in Mahabharat as Dhruva moving anti-clockwise. And my comment there is, in 1500 BC, there is no Dhruva to be seen. In fact, if you go back like 1,000 years, okay, so let's say 500,000. So let's say 1,000 years. So 1500 to 2500, okay, 2500 years, if you go back, there is no Dhruva Tara. I mean, no distinct Dhruva Tara. In fact, you have to go back another 500 years when Thuban was a prominent star at the position of NCP. And then from 1500, you have to come another 1,000 years, frankly, another 3,000 years, like to our time. Okay, so our times to see another distinct pole star, which is our Polaris. So at the time of the Mahabharat claim, the Mahabharat war that he is claiming, there is no pole star, forget it. So which pole star is going anti-clockwise? That's the problem with that. And then he doesn't say much about Arundhati, why it went ahead. By the way, and I'm going to show you what is it means when we say Arundhati is going ahead and what it means when it's behind. But before that, there is another statement that he quotes, and he very casually states that this particular statement, it is here. I don't know if I have, no, haven't highlighted these last 3 lines. He says the statement in Ashvamedha Parva, chapter 44, about the star starting from Shravishta, like a Dhanishta. Shravishta is also known as a Dhanishta, also points to the time. Please pay attention, guys. He's saying this astronomy reference of the star Shravishta, which also means Dhanishta, and that is correct, refers to the time of winter solstice, and that also matches with 1400 BC. And therefore, the Mahabharat war happened in 1400 BC. And hey, this is like additional corroborative reference. Let us see if there is any truth in this particular claim. Quickly, what we need, and this is what we just discussed at the beginning, like Nareshji or Narendraji was saying, that it inspired him to go and look at astronomy. Yesterday, at another place, somebody asked the question, which best book to start for Indian astronomy? And Adityaji, the answer I gave is, I said, why don't you start with my books, which is all the 3 books, 2 books on Mahabharat and Ramayana. Together, they have 800 plus astronomy references, because it becomes the whole idea of a katha, okay, is that it doesn't become dry. Okay, it becomes very juicy. There is a story going on. There is a historical aspect that we are learning, and in the same time, we can learn about the niti. We can learn about the swadhyaya. We can learn about bhakti. We can learn about vijnan, and we can learn about astronomy in this case. So you need to have a sangshay. It's very important, and the right kind of sangshay, not the sangshay of a mind, because that leads to destruction, but sangshay of a buddhi. You need a shraddha, and you need this jitnyasa. So for example, as soon as you read this statement, okay, I'm going to go back for a second. The Professor Iyengarji states that the Ashvamedha Parva reference, chapter 44 from the Mahabharat, of reference to Shravishta, also points to 1400 BCE. You know what should have happened? The reaction is not that, oh, wow, I did not know that. This is very interesting. No, that's not the reaction. No, what I'm saying is, on the Shraddha, you may take that. But remember, Shraddha can also be tamasic Shraddha. Some things, if you take it from a trustworthy source, that is perfectly fine. Now, if you trust Professor R.N. Iyengar's judgment, and therefore you trust that particular date, I have no objection. Even if it is wrong, I mean, I'm asserting that it is wrong, but I have no objection. Stick with it. It's not such a big deal, guys. I mean, still life would work out good for you, except maybe the dating of Mahabharat. My point is, there is no point somebody coming and asking me, see, Professor R.N. Iyengarji is saying 1478. What is your opinion? Do not ask such a question. Do the tapasya, read his works, his papers, read my books, and do your own analysis. Present it either to Professor R.N. Iyengarji or to me, and then ask the question. then you have the right prerequisite. You are qualified now to ask the question because you have done the necessary homework. Now you have the prerequisites. So two important point I wanted to mention is samshaya and jidnyasa. So curiosity, that jidnyasa should have immediately led somebody to think saying, let me go to the Mahabharat, Ashvamedha Parva, chapter 44, and let us see what that reference is. That's important. You cannot always leave it to another researcher or the researchers who's making the claim. Otherwise, if you trust in the wrong researcher or a wrong research, you will be taken on a ride. Okay, it's your choice. So what is that reference? Just as an illustration, I'm going to show it. But really, my objective is that you take this message in the sense, if you feel passionate enough, go and study yourself. Now, I'm not asking you to study everything. If you don't feel passionate enough, you say, that's very nice. It's like somebody saying, what kind of trees are grown in state of Georgia, where I live? Okay, I mean, some people may be very interested, like somebody in a botany will be interested. Others people may not be interested. That's fine. But if you are interested, you have to go deep into it. People have written books, go to Google, go to wherever you need to go. So what is that Ashwamedhika Parva reference that Professor Aryan Iyengarji is referring to? Now pay attention, guys. His claim is that I showed that doesn't qualify based on planetary and eclipses and whatnot. But somehow in his mind, he's not giving up. He thinks it's all matches. So not only that, he's saying there is something else in the Mahabharata that also matches for 1400 BC as the year of Mahabharata war. And he quotes this Ashwamedhika Parva reference 44. This is that reference. Now he said Shravishta. Here in this Gita Press version, it is actually called Shravana. Fortunately, it's not going to make a big difference. Okay. But Aditya, that is also another example to show that our ancient narratives do have some differences. For example, look at this verse. Aha purva tato ratrim masa shukladaya smruta shravanadeni rukshani rutava shishiradaya. That is the Gita Press version. What does the critical edition version says? Aha purva tato ratrim masa shukladaya smruta. Exactly the same. Next line is slightly different. Now, it may not be very clear. And that's what I mean by when the person is noting it down and making a copy of the original might make a mistake. What did that some person wrote somewhere? We don't know which one is original, which one is a copy. But Gita Press said Shravana Dini. Here the critical edition, so another manuscript said Shravishtha Dini. So Shra is same, Dini is same. In between that, Vana versus Vishtha. Okay, maybe the old copy was not very clear, and therefore person said, maybe I think it's Ravishta, or somebody thought maybe it's a Shravana, because it was not clear. That difference happens. Now, if those two nakshatras were separated by a wide margin, then we would have got a bigger problem. Fortunately, here also there is a problem, but not that big. You know why? Because Nakshatra Shravan and Nakshatra Shravishta, also called as Dhanishta, are next to each other. So we are talking a difference of approximately 1000 years, and you will see that. But that is not the biggest problem. Okay. So what is Professor Iyengarji is saying? He's saying based on this reference, and he's not taking the Gita Press version, which is fine. There are variations, and as long as you state which of the specific version of a text you are considering for your claim, whether right or wrong, as long as you are very explicit and clear, we cannot find faults. When the two verses comes like this, actually a good researcher will test both, and based on his or her preference, he might choose to go with one of the two, and that's perfectly fine. Because if it is wrong, it will be caught somewhere else, because Mahabharata, Ramayana, and other ancient Indian narratives are rich in astronomy evidence. So it may look like you. Yeah.
I'll add one point.
Go ahead.
You made a very fascinating point in two different shloka written by two different people or groups. See, if you know the purpose and if you know the where it is going to end up, like you know the end point on that, you can easily reconcile.
Yes.
Because different scholars, when they're writing it, it was all written by hand.
Correct.
And later on it became by print. But and so people can I can always see Vana and Vishtha very similar. Somewhere
Yes.
they missed out on a. maybe,
Yeah.
or somebody
Yeah.
missed out the Ashtadhini. Both are close. But
Correct. Yeah.
if you know the purpose,
Yeah.
the then you can easily reconcile it. And that
Correct.
for that you require a thinker like yourself or somebody who can put it together.
Yeah. Yeah. And a great point. I mean, really great point that you made. And we are going to see how, of course, we will look at both Shravana. I mean, we will do the calculation assuming Shravana is the right one. We will do the calculation assuming Shravishta is the right one. And even if these two nakshatras were separated from each other by many more nakshatras, we would have done the calculations using both nakshatras to be correct, as
Correct.
if they are correct.
Yeah.
And to your point, when we get a conclusion based on those two positions, and when we look at additional evidence, the things start falling in place, right?
Correct.
They will tell us which one could be right. And in science, it is always about more likely versus less likely scenario. You will never have a final word. That doesn't happen in science. It has a reductionist approach in a certain fashion. I'm not saying reductionist in a negative way. The reductionism of science also has a value. Okay, but it also limited in what it can achieve. Okay, so now let us see what happens. So Professor Iyengarji is only taking Sravishta as the reference as opposed to Shravana. That's fine. And he's saying that Shravishta takes to 1400 BCE. If we assume the Shravishta is same, I mean, is referring as a first nakshatra, referring to the beginning of a winter solstice. Now, based on what does he say beginning of winter solstice? Based on this translation. So those of you who cannot understand Hindi, I'll do this. So in that particular verse, it comes like this. It says the first day, first there is a day and then there is a night. It's a one way of saying it. We will see who is saying to who. By the way, that is the secret of this verse. Okay, and we will see, I'll give you the anticlimactic moment. These two verses, either of them, they are basically a variation of the same verse, have absolutely nothing to do with the timing of Mahabharat war. That is the secret, guys, by the way. Nothing, zero, zilch, nada. There is nothing. These two verses have or actually it's a one verse, whether Shravana or Shravishta, has nothing to do with the timing of Mahabharat war. But because this verse comes in the Mahabharata war, someone is thinking that this has something to do with the timing of Mahabharata war. And Professor Aryan Iyengar is not alone. There is one, my friend Mrugendra Vinodji. Now, I haven't talked to him for a very long time. I have to recall the name and my hairs are getting gray too. Mrugendra Vinodji also claimed that. And he claimed based on this both, by the way. So he said, hey, if you take this, it will be 1400. If you take this, it will be 400. Okay. And I mean, I have an email correspondence with him. Not just Mrugendra Vinodji, not just Professor Aryan Iyengarji, there are many. In fact, as a curiosity, as a jidnyasa and as a sanshay, I would encourage you, after this, go to Google and type Ashvamedha Parva chapter 44 or Ashvamedha Parva 44.2. I have not done this, so I don't know what you will get. But please do it and see what you get. Okay, you'll be fascinated. I hope you'll be fascinated because I don't know what you'll find. But let's go on. So how does he arrive at 1400? Because in this list it says first day, then night. Then it says first the Shukla Paksha, the bright half, then the Krishna Paksha or Vadya Paksha. Then he says similarly the first nakshatra is a Shravan, or per this other verse, first nakshatra is a Shravishta. And he says the first Rutu is a Shishira Rutu. Now, therefore, Professor Aryan Iyengar, same thing, Mrugendra Vinod, and I would say easily there are 20 other Mahabharata researchers who have misleadingly, in a wrong fashion, thought of this verse as something to do with the dating of Mahabharata war. I am asserting it has nothing to do with it. I'm going to show you. But so Shravishta or Shravan, and then there is a next mention of a Shishira Rutu, which means the winter season, and that begins with the day of winter solstice. So they are connecting. The first season is Shishira and first nakshatra is a Shravana. So they must be aligning together. What is that time? Now remember, the first season may be stated in a certain fashion and first nakshatra might be stated in a certain fashion. Actually, in ancient Indian narratives, we have sufficient evidence for that. The first nakshatra at the spring equinox is called first nakshatra. Right now, Aditya ji, in our Panchanga calendar, we call it Ashwini as the first nakshatra. Yes?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Ashwini Adi Ganana. Now, Ashwini is the first nakshatra that is also now 2000-year old, because now it has moved to Uttara Bhadrapada. But the reason we call Ashwini as the first nakshatra, because 2000 years ago, when the calendars were recalibrated, Ashwini was the first nakshatra because it was at the point of spring equinox. It was not at the point of winter solstice. My point is, sometimes the nakshatra at the winter solstice could be considered first. Spring equinox can be considered first. At the summer solstice can be considered first. At the fall equinox can be considered first. And even maybe the beginning of a Sharad Rutu, beginning of a Vasanta Rutu, all possibilities. So no one single answer that the nakshatra, first nakshatra always starts with the first day of the Shishira Rutu or winter solstice. But that is what they have taken because of this connection of nakshatra being mentioned as a first nakshatra and immediately the Rutu is mentioned as a Shishir. Let's go with even that and see how that also does not help dating of Mahabharata. Remember, there is no text without context. Okay, every text has to have a context. You cannot just blindly, lazily, in a tamasic fashion, just go and pick something and say it's in the Mahabharata, so must have something to do with the Mahabharata war. No, it doesn't. Let us see what it is. Before we do that, let us see what they are claiming, at least based on their wrong assumptions or based on their assumptions if they are correct. So Shravana and Shravishta at winter solstice. So Professor Iyengarji is saying Shravishta, which is Dhanishta at winter solstice. So what happens? I am showing you here the altar, which is Shravana Nakshatra. I don't know if you can see it. This is a Shravana Nakshatra here. Okay. And the Dhanishta or Shravishta is not that far. I'll show you on the next screen. And if we align that using astronomy simulation or mathematical calculation, it's your choice. Okay. If we align it to the point of winter solstice, which is to say right ascension of that star, Yogatara, is aligned with the 18th hour. Like total circle is a 24 hours. We align at a 18th hour because 0 or 24 is where spring equinox begins. It comes to 262 BCE. That is what Mrugendra Vinod approximately referring to 400 BCE. Depending on if you do the calculation as a back of the envelope, you may get that. Okay, this is using Shravan Nakshatra, the first side of the verse from Gita Press. Now, if you use Sravishta, as the verse used from the critical edition, the way Professor Iyengarji used it, this is Shravan here, and this is Nakshatra Dhanishta. While and this is the point of winter solstice. While I am at it, I want to also just show you the star Brahma Rashi, also known as Abhijit, also known as Vega. Remember, Aditya, last time we talked about Vega as a reference star. You know, this is given a magnitude of 0 or 1, some systems, but 0 as a reference point, like a calibration golden standard, like 24 karat gold, so to say. And from there, anything brighter gets the negative number, like sun and Venus and moon, and anything less brighter than Abhijit gets a positive number. So harder to see the star in the sky, it is going to have a very high magnitude. So this is that Brahma Rashi or Abhijit or Vega. And by the way, at the year of Mahabharat war, there is a description of planet Mars in the context of Brahma Rashi. Okay, and also Shravan. It says Vakranu Vakram Krutvam cha Shravane Pavaka Prabha Brahma Rashi Samavrutta Lohi Tango Vyavastita. So it came in the region, the Mars came in the region of Shravan, and then it aligned itself. Brahma Rashi Samavrutta, Sama Avrutta. Okay, it aligned itself along Brahma Rashi. If you go to 16 October 5561 BC, the first day of the Mahabharat war, you will find Mars, the planet Mars, is right here between Shravan and Dhanishta, and its right ascension is same as Brahma Rashi. That is that reference. But let's move on for our one. So Professor Iyengarji is saying that Dhanishta taken as a Shravishta, this is the star. If we align that, this is called also Sualosin, the Yogatara, align with the point of winter solstice, indeed it comes to 1400 BCE. Very important point. So here people get confused. They said, well, Nilesh, what is your problem? He's saying Shravishta, he's saying winter solstice, and he's saying 1400 BC. Do they not match? The answer is they absolutely match. If you consider Shravishta at winter solstice and want to find the timing, yes, it's 1400 BC. That is not the problem. So what is the problem? First problem is that to think of Shravishta must connect with the winter solstice. That is the first problem. Now, how would someone like Professor Iyengar ji would defend that, would say, Nilesh, what are you thinking? Here is the reason. And he will quote that verse. He will quote this verse and show me, look, after the Shravishta nakshatra is mentioned as a first nakshatra, there is a mention of a Rutu, Shishira Rutu, winter season, as the first Rutu. So look, the first nakshatra, first Rutu, their position. Fine. Okay, this can be the case because of the context here. Remember, there is no text without the context. So what is the possibility? So we looked at this. Now let's look at, I did something else. Here is the problem. Suppose instead of winter solstice, we would have taken, say, fall equinox. That is the thing going backward that will happen after this. If you want to match the nakshatra Shravishta or Shravan with some cardinal point. So if we do winter solstice, yeah, it comes to 400 BC and 1400 BC, as I showed you. If you go backwards in time, because if you come forward, there is nothing to our time, okay? We have to wait for another 4,000 years. But if you go backward, 1400, 400 BC we saw. If you go further back to fall equinox, it will come to like a Shravana around 7,800 BC, Shravishta around 9,000 BC. If you go further back to the summer solstice, and this is another reference that Professor Iyengar discusses in this paper, and we will discuss it in the next part or next to next. Beautiful reference, amazing reference. Again, this particular reference has absolutely nothing, the Shravishta or Dhanishta, at summer solstice. Okay, the reference comes in the Mahabharata text, but it has nothing to do with the dating of Mahabharata. That takes you to 14,500 BC. Now, don't confuse that with 14,500 BC with 1450 BC. Okay, please don't confuse that. I don't know if that's what Professor Iyengar did, but we will look at that another time. So now we come to what Aditya ji said, the context is important. And if you do in a very truthful fashion, Sattology fashion, look for the answer will fall in place like a jigsaw puzzle, a piece of jigsaw puzzle. So what is the context in which this particular verse, the Shravishta or Shravan and the Shishira Rutu comes? Here is the context. This comes in the Ashvamedha Parva. After the Ashvamedha Parva is done, Krishna is leaving for Dwarka. And now Arjuna is emotional. Arjuna is going to miss Krishna because, they're having a great company for a long time. And so Krishna is ready to go. And Arjuna says, please, 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 have something to discuss. They have emotional bond there. And he says, hey, when you told me the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield, that time, there was too much going on in my mind. And of course, you took away my moha, and that was a good thing. And I could fight, and we won the battle. We won the war. But I have forgotten some of it. Can you tell me that again? And Krishna says, look, that time I was in the zone. Okay, just like we say, at our best. And I told you this. I'm not sure if I can give you the exactly same and with the same efficacy and whatnot, but I will try. And in a slightly different format for a good reason, the Krishna is telling the essence of Gita to Arjuna again. It's called Anugita. And in part of that, Krishna is telling this to Arjuna, and now this time they are a bit relaxed. So it's not like a direct answer and direct order. He's saying, hey, you know what? In this context, let me tell you one story that happened in the past. Let me tell you something from the Itihasa. Now remember, Itihasa with respect to Mahabharata times. Mahabharata is a Itihas to us, but to the Mahabharata, the Itihas is the things that happened before them, long time before them. In that context, I'll show you. So Arjuna is saying, so tell me, Brahmam yat param vedya tanme vakhyatu marasi bhavato hi prasadena sukshmame ramati mati. Dialogue is going on again. And then Vasudeva vacha, Krishna vacha. Okay, I don't want to get into the translation. Atrapyu daha prantim itihasam puratanam. That's the important point I want to mention. Mama itihasa puratanam. I will tell you something from itihasa. Itihasa is something, that's how it happened, of deep antiquity, puratanam. And then he's telling a particular someone. Just so that this is chapter 35, to make that connection, I am showing you here. So Krishna is telling this Anugita to Arjuna, doing the moksha dharma, the advice, the discussion on the moksha dharma. Part of that, he's telling Upakhyan, story within a story. That is the style of Mahabharata. That is the style of Puranas also. Story within a story, story within a story. And that's how the knowledge is imparted. So there the story comes that then Krishna is now saying, hey, one time, you know what happened? A long time ago, Brahma met with these folks, these rishis, and Brahma said this to them. So that is what is beginning here, chapter 36. And if you follow this, guys, now, so Brahma is talking about Tamogun, then Rajogun, Sattvagun, which in Bhagavad Gita you can see being discussed in chapter 14, again chapter 16, and of course chapter 17. Okay, and many other places also. So that's what he's discussing. He comes down here, down in the sense of like I'm reading these chapters from the Ashvamedhic Parva. When he comes to that Ashvamedhic Parva, chapter 44, it is Brahma, guys. Remember, it is Brahma telling to some rishis about the nakshatra Shravishta or Shravana and possibly the winter season or a winter solstice, which is possibly what possibly, which is the time when Brahma is discussing that with the rishi. Long time before Mahabharata, has absolutely decisively nothing, nada to do with the dating of Mahabharata. Mahabharata is full of upakhyan. That is what we can read in the first chapter. Therefore, it is 100,000 plus verses. Now, Vaishampayan like removed the upakhyan and created a Bharat Samhita of 24,000 verses. So these upakhyan is coming there. That is referring to a specific time, which is the discussion timing of Brahma and some of the rishis, which happened in deep antiquity with respect to the timing of Mahabharata, has nothing to do with the dating of Mahabharata. Actually, I was going to consider something else, but let me not go there. So let me actually stop here. So my point is there is no text without the context. You must understand the context. Let me stop this one. And instead of going further, Aditya ji, because we are discussing Ashwamedha Parva, I get these questions all the time. And I thought you would be a best person, good person to discuss at least some aspects of it. So one thing, I mean, there are many questions. Exactly why Ashwamedha Parva, why Ashwamedha Yajna is done, how it is done, who does it, what are the pros and cons, what is actually involved. And of course, the one favorite question is the meat of the horse that is eaten during the Ashwamedha Yajna. So I think I asked you like 3-4 questions there, like why it is done, when it is done, how it is done, and is the meat of Ashwa or horse is eaten. If you can enlighten me, but enlighten also the rest of the people, that will be great.
No, you know very well. So I will be enlightened by you. But generally, Ashwamedha. Ashwa means horse, and Medha means who can catch it or who can hurt it. So that was the Yagya, and Yagya means a karma. Yagya is born of karma. Yagya karma samudbhava. So it is a very difficult type of yagya which is done by kings, and where the horse is left to roam freely, and not any horse. It has to be the fastest and the most healthiest of all the horses. And there is an army contingent which follows it, Sena. And like Bhagwan Ram did it when Shatrughna went with, it was done by Bhagwan Ram, and it was done by Bhagwan Ram's father, Dashrath, and in which Kausalya actually prays to the horse after it has returned, and then puts a sword on it. And but there is no mention that now the third is Sagar Maharaj did it, and which we know that Kapil, he meant to Kapil Muni, the 60,000 sons, and they turned into ashes because of Kapil Muni's. So the references I'm talking about, the historical references, are that when the horse is captured and it is put to sword, means is killed after it is after the yagya is performed. That's the procedure of that yagya. Now you have to follow the procedure of the yagya, and that meat is never consumed by the family. It is through mantra, and they ensure that the horse gets a new body. So normally after the yagya, the Brahmana people who are experts in those mantras, they ensure that the horse has transcended to a human body or a devta body after this thing. So ultimately it is done from a point of view of elevating the horse to a next yoni.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's the whole purpose. At the same time, it also tests the armies of the state or the king who is doing it, so
Hmm.
that others can have some respect for it.
Yeah.
Because if others do not respect the king, then the spread of Sanatan Dharma is affected. That's the
Hmm.
whole purpose. But
Hmm.
there is no reference I ever heard, and this was a question on one of our talk shows, that
Hmm.
did they eat the meat? There is no
Hmm.
reference. Because
Yeah.
see, after the Ashwamedha Yagya,
Huh.
the horse meat is left in a tree for other
Huh.
animals to hear. It is kept in a tree nearby. In
Okay.
the Ashwamedha Yagya of Bhagwan Ram, the
Hmm.
horse is that time the horse was not killed, but
Hmm.
that horse was donated to a rishi, because
Hmm.
that is also considered as good as giving it up.
Huh.
And the third time, in the case of Sagar Maharaj, the
Hmm.
horse was killed again, but
Hmm.
this time he attained a Vaikuntha form. So
Hmm.
the purpose was different, and therefore many acharyas say today that if you cannot revive or ensure the next life for the horse to
Hmm.
be better,
Hmm.
then you
Hmm.
should not perform it. So in Kali Yuga, it is forbidden, because
Hmm.
people are generally not pure enough to perform those mantras in such a way that the horse gets a new life.
Hmm.
So therefore it is forbidden. In Kali Yuga, all yagyas of these kinds are forbidden.
Yeah.
The only yagya which is more difficult than Ashwamedh, sorry I cut you off,
Yeah. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
is Rasuya Yagya. Because
Huh.
Rasuya Yagya is for the rest of the life till you are the king, they should pay taxes.
Huh.
That's the only one which is more difficult.
Right. And that also Yudhishthir did before the war, right?
Before the
Many,
war.
many
That
years
is
before
what
the
is.
war.
That is why. So you don't become Samrat without that.
There you go. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
you are not. So Samrat, not everybody is called Samrat.
Right.
Samrat means that whichever you conquer for the rest of the life, they should pay taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a couple of points I wanted to add related to what you just said. I mean, actually, your discussion triggered those. One is the description I have read, and I'm trying to think whether I read that both Ramayana Ashwamedh and also Mahabharata Ashwamedh. But Mahabharata Ashwamedh, I remember for sure that the whatever the background principle, but the meat was put it on the fire, where Yudhishthir takes the smoke of that, something like one verse comes like, so we don't now we have lost possibly the science behind it or the purpose
Right.
behind it, but he takes the auspicious smoke of a horse meat, like from the fire, like the way we will do with the arti, and something that is description is there. And the other point I wanted to mention, just like you said, the process was that the one has to ensure a higher form of life to that horse. You see that whether it was always achieved or not, but you see that similar point of view around the world. For example, what we will call Americans, or the say, I don't know if it's a right word, Native American, or whatever the word we want to use, like a buffalo dance. If in the Montana, and I lived in up in Alberta. Actually, there is one park which is called Smashed Head Buffalo National Park.
Yeah.
Where these the Blackfoot Indians there will bring those buffaloes over a cliff. The buffaloes fall, and they only take those buffaloes that they need for sustenance for the next winter. And but after that, they used to do a buffalo dance before doing this. And the idea there was, they're dancing, they're saying, actually, yes, I mean, we are limited, we need this food for ourselves, but we pray that you get a higher form.
Right.
Okay, I mean, you go back to being a buffalo and go back to your family. Or I know Indians, that's again, everyone in the West uses the word Indians. That's funny. Every native things around the world is called Indian, but I know Indians, like the northern part of Japan, what they do when they catch for food the polar bear, actually they take the meat. And actually, it's funny, I mean, I'm calling it funny, but it's a very relevant thing for their tradition. They offer the meat of the bear, the polar bear, to the bear itself, like the bear that has been killed. So they decorate it, they offer the thing, they say, hey, this is you, but now for sustenance we'll take it. My point being, this if we go in the ancient times, you see that same point of view everywhere. And how that was connected, I don't know. But this is something again fascinating. And again, it came to me because you mentioned that the horse should be assured a higher form of life.
Yeah. And the power of the mantra was tested.
Hmm.
So the people who are doing the mantra, they have to be extremely experienced Otherwise, this is not performed.
Hmm.
So this yagya for Dashrath Maharaj was performed by Vasishtha Muni himself,
Hmm.
who could see next life, who could see past life. In the case of Kapil Muni, also Sagar Maharaj, also
Hmm.
the mantras were performed by the most elevated personality in the entire thing. So
Hmm.
for Maharaj Dashrath, Vamadev,
Hmm.
Vasishtha Muni,
Ah,
Vishwamitra Muni. Now,
ah.
these people, they were not ordinary people who performed this. So,
Yeah.
ordinary people were never allowed to do Ashwamedha Yajna.
Right. They
You
were
have
not
to,
able to do it, right? I
they
mean, you have
cannot
to
do
have an
it.
army and go around and do
No,
the whole
no,
thing.
even
So,
the priests have to
yeah,
be,
yeah, yeah.
sages have
Okay.
to be someone who is, who can see the past, present, and future. Kali
Correct.
Yuga, we do not have such people.
Yeah, yeah. So you're
So,
saying some priest or archaka is not going to do it.
no, no, no,
He's
no.
not
It has to be
qualified.
done by the Acharya.
Yeah.
It has to be
Okay.
done by someone who is who has seen past, like Vasishtha Muni. We have no doubts on that, Vasishtha
Hmm.
Muni, and
Hmm.
we have no doubts on Markandeya Rishi. Now,
Hmm.
these are the people who perform Yashvamedha. Actually, Markandeya
Hmm.
Rishi also performed for an earlier king. I lost the name, but I can tell you later on. So
Okay.
only qualified people were allowed. Nobody
Hmm.
else allowed. Like
Hmm.
Rasu Yagya is more difficult than Ashwamedha Yagya, because horse cannot go beyond a certain boundary.
Hmm.
But in Rasu Yagya, you have to send the armies out deliberately as far as they
Ah.
can go. The
Ah.
point is they should see the other side of the ocean.
Ah.
That's
Okay.
the
Okay.
catch.
Okay.
So everything in the
Interesting.
between they should capture, and they should make sure. And also, this was a practice to ensure dharma is established,
Huh.
because people gradually forget it. So say,
True. True.
the armies will go there, and
Yeah.
they carry brahmanas with them, and
Hmm.
they stay in all those locations. They are the ones who provide
Ah.
reporting back to the king.
Very interesting.
So the taxes are given to the brahmanas, not to
Yeah.
the king.
Yeah. See, that is now consistent with the other descriptions that you hear during the Rajeshwa Yajna or even Ashwamedha Yajna. And those descriptions are when actually, so the, say, Ashwamedha Yajna, the horse comes back. Or in Rajeshwa Yajna, I'm not so sure, but Ashwamedha Yajna, let's say the horse comes back. And when the actual Yajna begins, you see the descriptions in Ramayana, but also Mahabharata, that it's like a conference. Like the
Correct.
yajna is going on, people are fed, but there is a musical programs, there is a dance, there is a discussion between the knowledgeable people about various subjects.
Right.
So it is a conference, right? It is
Conference.
also a conference. So it's a occasion for integration of many things. So
Right.
that what you just said makes sense. Maybe these brahmanas, those who go with the horse or with the armies, they come back and maybe give the report of how the things are
Absolutely.
going on. Very interesting.
See, the earlier time, the brahmanas responsibility was not just puja part.
Hmm.
Their responsibility was also to spread the education about
Hmm.
dharma, Veda, and therefore you'll see different versions of the Veda also there, like in
Hmm.
Parsi, in Armenia, Russia, Kuru,
Hmm.
Uttar Kuru, and
Hmm.
all these areas. Different aspects of Veda are there. May
Correct.
slightly differ because Smriti can change,
Yes.
but Shruti cannot change. So
Correct.
basic Vedic principles are always the same, but Smriti you will see different versions
Yeah.
everywhere.
Correct. Correct. The puja paddhati might change because of
Might
time,
change,
place, circumstances.
correct.
Right.
But the concept doesn't change of approaching Brahman or Parabrahman.
Right. For example, in Israel, like
Yeah,
I remember the scene from Schindler's List, where what you see, say in India, if there is some kind of a puja, immediately the flowers comes into the picture.
right.
But Israel land like Israel, not now. I mean, they have just turned it into a very fascinating place. But before that, right, without the water and lot of dust and a desert-like place. So Schindler's List, if you remember, like when they finally go and put to pay their respect, the Schindler's family, the Schindler Jews, they are called, right? They go and pay the respect to Schindler, wherever his place is in Israel. They actually go and everyone puts a stone. I don't know if you remember that, puts a stone, because that is what is available there. So it's a very, very fascinating, like how things can change. The smriti can change depending on time, place, circumstances.
Exactly. Like in some places, cactus is offered. Now,
Hmm.
cactus you may not offer in India, but in
Right.
Rajasthan, cactus is offered some places.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And but in southern countries like Mexico and all, cactus is an edible plant, and
Yes.
it is offered very freely as a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
And yeah, yes, so
No,
it
no, I was going to
changes.
say, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
The concept is to give. That's the
Yeah.
main thing.
Just because you mentioned, and you glad you said that. You said in the Mexico or the southern part, the southern North America, it is a edible, and that is true. See, I did not know this for a long time. The place I grew up in India, I saw cactus-like things for a long time.
Yeah.
But there is a difference, and I learned that difference when I went to Santa Barbara, not far from you. There is this whole cactus garden, okay, in Santa Barbara. And I said, oh, and when I went to Mexico and I have eaten cactus of all kinds, I mean, whatever they cooked, and I said, oh, wow, why did I not eat it in India? Apparently, now India may have a cactus, but what India has many times, at least the places I grew up, and my mother told me, don't even go close to it, it's poisonous and so on. Do you know what is the difference? It looks like a cactus. I mean, no difference. It's called euphoria. There is one cactus family and euphoria, and only the expert can tell you. There is the way the thorns are. That tells you whether euphoria or cactus. They look the same essentially, but there is a huge difference. Cactus you can eat, euphoria is poisonous.
Yeah.
So,
in San Diego, cactus is sold everywhere, so it's
right. Yeah. So I am done. Next time we will continue with this part. There are very fascinating references that Professor Iyengarji has mentioned. One is the Abhijit, fall of Abhijit, and then a commentary reference from Harivamsha, and we shouldn't let it go. And this is very fascinating that he especially dug out that commentary reference from Harivamsha. Okay, and it has directly to do with Krishna, directly to do with the birth of Krishna or Krishna's time, the birth time of Krishna. So we will definitely do that next time.
So thank you all for watching this, and we did answer your questions, what you asked on Nilesh Oak's videos. And we will cover, and we did give a shout out to one of his supporters. And that's actually the purpose of these talks, is that you get inspired to look into your own scriptures and your own heritage with your own eyes, hands, and with your own experience, and also Shravana, which is very important. So the whole point is that you should do your own swadhyaya, and not everything can be spoon-fed, because when it is spoon-fed, your habits spoil, and then you do not learn anything. So with that being in mind, I'll see you in the next show. And thank you all for listening. And we will market secrets of Ashvamedha also in this.
Okay, very good.
Okay, namaskar. Thank you.
Namaskar. Thank you.